Recently, the biological mother of my stepchildren re-entered their lives, and it has caused a significant upheaval. My husband has not been supportive throughout this process, so I am filing for divorce. I am a 30-year-old woman who has been married to my 34-year-old husband for 6 years. He has 16-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. When we started dating and then got married, we went to family therapy. I made it clear that I was not trying to usurp the role of their mother or replace her. Their mother had been absent from their lives since they were about 8. For me and my family, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Over the 6-year course of our marriage, I seamlessly blended with my husband's twins. We navigated the complexities of parenting and found our own unique dynamic within the family. They even started calling me Mom when they were 12 years old, which was 8 years after their biological mother had disappeared from their lives. I never imagined she would reappear, nor did I anticipate the emotional maelstrom that would follow. When their birth mother came back into their lives, they were extremely excited. For about 6 months, things seemed great. Then, they started calling me by my real name, which was hurtful, but I respected their choice. Their excitement about reconnecting with their biological mother was palpable. I watched as they eagerly awaited her arrival, their anticipation tinged with a longing I couldn't fully understand for those 6 months. At first, everything seemed harmonious. They showered her with affection, making up for lost time and rebuilding bridges that had been in ruins for years. However, with her return came a subtle shift, a fissure in the foundation of our family. Their once frequent use of the word Mom to address me dwindled, replaced by the starkness of my first name. Each time they uttered it, it felt like a tiny dagger piercing the carefully constructed facade of our family ties. I grappled with the pain and swallowed it down with a forced smile, unwilling to let them see the cracks forming inside me. They had the right to reconnect with their biological mother, yet the pain of being relegated to my given name echoed in the hollow chambers of my heart. I never questioned their decision or demanded an explanation for the sudden shift in our dynamic. Instead, I buried my pain. Lately, the twins have been very disrespectful. It began subtly, like a whisper on the wind, barely perceptible yet impossible to ignore. They chafed at the boundaries of our household rules, pushing back against the guidelines that had once kept our family unit intact. Curfew became a mere suggestion, a trivial inconvenience to be disregarded at will. Their bedrooms turned into veritable war zones, littered with the detritus of adolescent rebellion. It was an implicit protest against the order I had fought so hard to maintain. But it was their words that cut the deepest. Each barb, like a poisonous arrow, was aimed squarely at my heart. "You're not our real mother," they spat, the words dripping with contempt. I recoiled at the accusation, the weight of their words crushing me under their burden. I wondered if they could not see the love I had poured into their lives, the sacrifices I had made in the name of our family. They talked back to me, saying that I'm not their real mother and that I'm the reason their mother left. In fact, I didn't meet their mother until almost a year and a half after she left. They said that now that she's back, they don't need me anymore. 3 weeks ago, there was a major incident. My stepson called me a derogatory term. I felt the blood drain from my face and my heart pound in my chest as I struggled to comprehend the magnitude of his betrayal. In that moment, all sense of reason fled. I snatched his phone from his trembling hands, my own fingers trembling with a mixture of anger, and told him to stay in his room until his father returned. Instead, he ran out and went to his mother. She came over, and it turned into a huge fight. She tried to hit me, and I pushed her out of my house. My stepdaughter then told me that if I ever put my hands on her mom again, she'd attack me. They both went to their mother's house. In the quiet aftermath of the storm that had torn through our once happy home, memories of happier days lingered like a bittersweet ache in my heart. I cast my mind back to those moments of joy, the simple pleasures that had bound us together as a family. I remembered the laughter that filled our home on lazy Saturday afternoons, the sound of their voices blending with mine as we shared stories and dreams over bowls of melting ice cream. It was a ritual, our own little tradition born of love and shared experiences. We would gather around the kitchen table, our faces sticky with sweet indulgence as we savored each creamy spoonful. The taste of chocolate and vanilla was a comforting reminder of the bond that held us together. There were also the adventures we had shared, the memories we had made on family outings. I can still feel the warmth of their little hands as we walked down crowded streets, their eyes wide with wonder at the magic that surrounded us. We would spend hours exploring every nook and cranny of the amusement park, their laughter ringing like music as we rode roller coasters and met our favorite characters. But now, in the wake of this storm, those happy days felt like a distant memory, a faded photograph tucked away in the recesses of my mind. The joy that had once filled our home had been replaced by a void, an emptiness, and a numb detachment that left me feeling adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Gone were the days of chauffeuring them to their various sports and activities. That sense of purpose had been replaced by a sense of resignation that weighed heavily on my shoulders. I would sit in the driver's seat of the car, the radio playing softly in the background, waiting for them to come out of the house, but they never did. Their absence was a stark reminder of the distance that now separated us. So, with a heavy heart and a weary soul, I made the decision to step back and let their biological mother take on the responsibilities that I had once shouldered alone. I would no longer wake them up for school or drive them to their extracurricular activities. I would let them navigate the complexities of their daily lives without my guiding hand. It was a painful decision, one made out of necessity rather than choice, but I knew it was the only way forward. It was a small step toward regaining my own sense of self amidst the chaos that threatened to consume us all. As I watched them disappear into the distance, their figures fading into the horizon like ghosts, I knew it was time to forge a new path. And then came the bombshell. We were supposed to go to Disney World for spring break that week, but I canceled everything. I told my husband and the kids. I guess they thought I was bluffing. We were supposed to leave Thursday night, and when I didn't start the usual vacation preparations, they were shocked. They started saying that I was jealous that their mother was back in their lives, that I'm a terrible person, and that I'm selfish. There was a lot of name-calling, and my husband remained silent. They hurled insults like daggers, each one hitting its mark as they lashed out in their pain and confusion. I asked my husband if he would intervene, but his response was cold and indifferent. His words were like a knife in my already bleeding wound. He said I was wrong to cancel the trip. In that moment, I realized I was fighting a battle that could not be won, a war of attrition that had already claimed its victims. I left and went to a hotel. I knew that I could no longer carry the burden of our broken family alone. With a heavy heart and a tired soul, I made a decision born of necessity. I chose to seek solace in the quiet refuge of a hotel room, far from the chaos that had consumed our once happy home. I needed time to heal the wounds that had been inflicted on my soul, time to find the strength to rebuild my life, even if it meant the end of my marriage. My husband blew up my phone, begging me to come back. Yesterday, he told me that their mother had disappeared again. His voice, pleading and desperate, pierced the silence like a knife, cutting through the numbness that had settled over me like a shroud. He spoke of the kids' tears and cries for forgiveness, but it fell on deaf ears. In my absence, the kids also called, crying and apologizing. In their moment of despair, they had turned to the woman who had loved them unconditionally, despite the wounds they had inflicted on her heart. But I don't want to go back to that situation anymore. I don't feel like I'm part of their family anymore, and they can't just cry and expect to come back now that their mother is gone. The love that once bound us together as a family had been replaced by a sense of resignation. I recognized that our paths had diverged in ways we could never have anticipated. So, with a heavy heart and tears streaming down my cheeks, I said, I want a divorce. My voice was barely above a whisper as the weight of my decision settled like a stone in the pit of my stomach. I watched my husband's expression change from shock to resignation. His eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. As I turned to leave, the silence of the empty room echoed in my ears. I knew that there was nothing left to say in the silence of the night as the city lay shrouded outside my window. In the darkness, I found myself grappling with my emotions. The turmoil of my thoughts threatened to overwhelm me. I knew that their mother had been manipulating them, twisting their fragile emotions like a puppeteer pulling the strings of a marionette, but I never said anything. Even with that knowledge, the sting of their betrayal cut deep, a wound that refused to heal, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. Yes, they are 16 years old, an age teetering on the cusp between childhood and adulthood, but that doesn't give them the right to treat me this way. Just because they're 16 doesn't mean they can be disrespectful and threatening. Despite the venom that dripped from their lips, I had always stood by them. I had opened my heart to them, embraced them as my own flesh and blood, despite the lack of a biological connection. I know that their feelings play a role in this, but I'm a person too, with feelings that run just as deep as theirs. As I stood alone in the darkness, I realized it was time to reclaim my own voice, to assert my own worth in a world that seemed determined to diminish it. In considering this divorce, the situation with the children was only a small part of my decision-making process. The rest is due to the fact that my husband did not support me during this difficult time. I have always believed that marriage was a partnership, a sacred bond forged in love and mutual respect. But as I watched him remain silent throughout this ordeal, I couldn't help but wonder if our union had been built on shaky ground from the start, and if he had ever truly loved me. The realization cuts deep when I can't count on him to help me through this difficult situation that we are all going through. So, if I can't rely on him, why should I stay in this marriage? I don't believe that I should be treated the way I have been, which is not normal. I've been threatened and insulted by those I loved and cared for as my own, and it cuts me to the core. It's a wound that refuses to heal, no matter how hard I try to ignore it. And I don't want an apology just because their biological mother ran out on them again. I just need time for myself. Her mother's sudden disappearance had reopened old wounds and dredged up memories of past betrayals and broken promises. Even as I struggled to make sense of the chaos that surrounded me, I yearned for an apology, one that was truly heartfelt. I don't believe anyone can be genuinely sorry merely 2 days after such an upheaval caused by their actions. I do not doubt the sincerity of their words, nor the depth of their pain. However, forgiveness cannot be rushed, nor can it be won by empty gestures. I need more than just words to heal the wounds that have been inflicted on me, more than empty promises to mend the shattered remnants of our broken family. I would never abandon them, but I require time for myself because my feelings have been callously disregarded. Needing this time for self-reflection doesn't make me selfish, it's essential for me to acknowledge the profound depth of my own pain. In the midst of the chaos that threatens to consume us all, yes, I am an adult, but I am also human, with emotions that run as deep as theirs. In this moment of vulnerability, I realize that I cannot be the pillar of strength they so desperately need when my own foundation is so fragile and tenuous. I sit in the dimly lit hotel room. The soft hum of the air conditioner provides a soothing backdrop to the cacophony of thoughts swirling in my mind. I find myself grappling with the complexities of human emotion. The events of the past few days weigh heavily on my heart, a burden too heavy to bear alone. I never asked or expected them to be perfect, for I knew that imperfection is an inherent part of humanity. But even in the midst of our flaws and shortcomings, there had always been love, a bond that had weathered the trials and tribulations of everyday life. I had never expected them to be the most mature of individuals, but I had hoped that they would at least recognize the depth of my pain, the wounds their words had inflicted on my soul. They have feelings, and so do I. I love them with a ferocity that defies reason. They are my children, my heart and soul woven into the fabric of their being. But this is an extremely complicated situation. It's not just because they called me a derogatory name. Yes, they did, but I've been called worse. I am a woman, strong and resilient in the face of adversity. Ultimately, this is about my husband not supporting me in this situation. And yes, I am hurt that they called me that. I'm entitled to be. It hurts even more because it comes from 2 people that I love dearly and would never want to hurt, nor would I ever intentionally harm them. I had always believed that marriage was a partnership, a sacred vow to stand by each other through thick and thin. But as I watched him remain on the sidelines, his silence is a painful reminder of his failure to stand up for me. I cannot help but feel a deep sense of betrayal, not just for myself but for all stepparents in similar situations. As we navigate the often rocky terrain of blended families, I would like to offer a few insights from my own perspective. I understand the challenge of riding the emotional roller coaster of loving someone with children of their own and the hurdles one has likely overcome to gain acceptance in their lives. First and foremost, remember that building a family in a blended situation requires teamwork. You and your partner need to be on the same page and communicate openly. Be honest about your hopes, fears, and expectations. Without a solid foundation of mutual understanding and support, it's easy for resentment and mistrust to seep in and undermine all the efforts you've made to create a loving and harmonious home that embraces the unique dynamics of your blended family. Each family is different, and what works for one may not work for another. Be flexible and adaptable, willing to adjust your expectations and approach as needed to accommodate the needs and preferences of all family members. The key is that you and your partner must work together to build a family. It's the only way to make it work. Otherwise, all of your efforts and all the love you put into it will be in vain. Hello, I have received a lot of messages asking for an update. I am now in a position to provide one. You can refer to my previous post to understand the context. I went back to the house 2 days ago. My husband and I had agreed to sit down and have a long, overdue conversation about what had happened and the cracks that had begun to form in the foundation of our family. As we sat across from each other in the dimly lit living room, memories of happier days lingered like ghosts in the corners of my mind. I couldn't help but recall the countless afternoons spent together as a family, sun-drenched days filled with laughter and love. But now, as I sat across from my husband, the gravity of our situation bore down on us like a leaden weight. I knew that we could no longer ignore the cracks that had started to form in the foundation of our family. We had a long talk about what had occurred, about how I didn't feel protected by him, and how he was aware of the disrespectful behavior but did nothing to stop it. As I sat across from my husband, the weight of his words settled like a leaden weight in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't help but feel a sense of disbelief at what he was saying. He admitted that he still loved his ex-wife, and that was the reason behind his actions. He spoke at length about his lingering feelings for her, the fear that had gripped him after her sudden return into their children's lives. He didn't want to do anything that might make her leave the children, as she had left him and the twins before. However, he claimed that this didn't change his feelings for me. I listened in stunned silence. The air was heavy with the weight of unspoken truths and unresolved feelings. How could he expect me to believe that he loved me when his heart still belonged to someone else? When he professed his love for me, it was a blatant contradiction that left a bitter taste of betrayal lingering on my tongue. The reality of our situation washed over me like a tidal wave. I knew that the happy memories of our past were now overshadowed. His admission of lingering feelings for his ex-wife was a wound that cut deep, a betrayal that shattered the fragile illusion of our marriage. I told him that I was the one sitting there, not her, and questioned how he could still love her. The conversation became very emotional, with crying and screaming. I made the decision to move forward with the divorce. I also spoke to the twins. They cried and said it was their fault, asking me to forgive them and their father, and pleading with me not to leave. With a heavy heart and a voice thick with emotion, I explained to them that although I still loved them dearly, staying with their father was not a path I could choose. I assured them that I would always be there for them, that our bond would endure even in the face of adversity. But I also made it clear to them that their actions had consequences, and they couldn't treat people with such disrespect and expect everything to return to normal. I told them that as much as I loved them, staying with their father and in that home was not an option. However, I would still be open to having a relationship with them if they desired. But I was still very hurt by what had happened and would appreciate a bit more time for myself. So, I moved out and am now staying in a unit in one of my rental properties. There's exciting news: I bought my first house. I'm thrilled about what lies ahead. Next month, I will be taking a break from work for a few weeks, maybe even the whole month, perhaps 2 or 3. I plan to explore the world, focus on healing, and rediscover myself. I got so caught up in the lives of the twins and my husband that I wasn't really focusing on what I wanted and what made me happy. So, I bought tickets to Disney World again. I also made plans to go to Thailand next month, and from there, I'm open-ended. I'm doing some spontaneous trips that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to see the 7 wonders of the world, after all. I'm really happy to be in this new phase of my life. I told the kids that I would love to have them over for dinner once I get settled into my new place. I feel bad about canceling their trip to Disney, so I'm thinking about financing a trip for them this summer for their 17th birthday, just not with me. I'm excited to be traveling alone and I really need this mental break.